Hello and welcome to this week's assembly in our rainbow theme. This week we're looking at the colour orange. I wonder what you think of when I say the word orange. What objects do you imagine are that colour? Here are a few ideas. Oranges are orange. And then we have carrots that are orange and flowers that we often see in the summer. Some of those are orange. And when I was young, when I was perhaps your age, orange was very fashionable as a colour for decorating your houses. And sometimes your living room would have orange curtains and an orange carpet and an orange patterned wallpaper. And it was very fashionable in those days. But orange is often used as a colour that warns. And here we have some more orange things. We have orange traffic lights and orange flashing lights that we often see outside of a school building. Some orange lights that we might see on the edge of a skip or another building to warn us. And then we have a high-vis jacket that we might see people who are working on a building site wearing. And then armbands that maybe some of you wear when you're learning to swim. So orange is often about danger and protection. Now we have a few more symbols here. You might have seen these perhaps on the side of a lorry or on a cupboard somewhere. And these are orange warning symbols. So first of all, this one here means irritant. And irritant means something that if you get it on yourself, on your skin, it would make you itch and it might leave some damage to your skin. So you need to keep right away from that. This one you might have seen a bit more, the skull and crossbones, and it means something is poisonous and not to be taken. Then we have this symbol, which means corrosive, and corrosive means that it might be a liquid or a chemical that if you spill it and it gets on your hands or maybe on the furniture, it would damage, it might burn or leave a bad mark. And this symbol says explosive. Something in here might be likely to cause an explosion. One that perhaps you've seen a bit more often, this one means flammable. Something here is likely to catch on fire. So all of these symbols are useful to warn us about things, and they're things that we should keep right away from. And so today we're going to have a story from the Bible that involves the colour orange. And again, orange is something to do with warning in this story. And it's a story about three young men called Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego. And you can see too that it involves a fire. Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego were three young men who'd been taken away from their home country. They hadn't chosen to go there. There'd been a lot of fighting going on and they'd been made to leave. And they were taken to another country called Babylon. And when they were in Babylon, they were expected to fit in and do what the king said. And so Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego had to decide what they thought was the right thing to do. They needed to obey the rules of the land, but sometimes the king wanted them to do things that they knew would be wrong. The king didn't worship God the way that Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego did. And one day the king made a rule. He said, I'm going to build a huge statue. Don't exactly know what the statue looked like, but maybe it would be a bit like this, a huge golden statue. And the king made a rule. He said, anytime the musicians play, I want you all to bow down and worship my statue. Well, Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego had a decision to make. What would they do? Would they do what the king said and bow down and worship his statue? Or would they disobey and not bow down? Well, the three young men knew, as good Jews who worship God, they should only worship God and not a statue or a king or anything else. And so they decided that they wouldn't do it. And that when the music played, they would not bow down and worship, because they only worshipped God. And this is what they said. And here we have the words from the Bible. And the young men said to the king, "If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you have set up." Well, of course, this made the king furious. These young men were not obeying his rule. And so he did what he said. He got some of his servants to collect the young men and throw them one by one into the fiery furnace. Well, the king expected, and we would expect too, that the young men would quickly die. And the king watched at a safe distance to see what would happen to them. But then something really strange happened. As the king looked, he saw not just Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, but there was another figure in the fire too. And as he looked, he could see that Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego were still walking about. They weren't being hurt, their clothes weren't singed, they were fine. And they were with somebody else. And the king looked and he said, "This other person looks like an angel." Well, the king called for the servants and he said, "Quickly, let these men out." And so out of the fire came Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego. And the other character, the other person, had disappeared by now. I wonder who that would have been. What do you think it was? Well, Christians believe that that other character was somebody sent by God, an angel, to protect these three young men, that God was with them all that time and he protected them from the fire. What do you think the king thought about this? Well, the king realised that the God that Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego worshipped would be the true and powerful God. And so the king bowed down to worship himself. And he made a new rule. He said, anybody must respect the God of these three young men because he is powerful to save. He rescued them from the fiery furnace. I wonder what we can learn from this story. Well, I think there are several things that we can learn. Firstly, we shouldn't get ourselves into difficulties if we don't need to. We shouldn't go into dangerous situations. But sometimes things will happen. Sometimes things happen to us that are not good. Sometimes sad things happen or bad things. And we have to decide how we are going to behave. And Christians believe that we can always trust God to be with us. Things won't always go the way we want. We won't always be able to do what we want. But we can trust that God will always be with us in every situation. Sometimes amazing things will happen, like the angel that was sent to rescue these young men. And maybe sometimes they won't. But Christians can believe that God is always there and always watching and always looking out for his followers. So perhaps we can think about that during the week. Think about things that we might not like that are happening. Maybe people we know get sick. Maybe we can't see people as much as we would like and we miss them. But Christians believe we can always rely on God to be with us and to want the best for us at all times. So thank you for listening, and next week I'll see you again. Bye.